Andy Reid won the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, Josh. And all of Philadelphia is acting like that they just won their own Super Bowl. Like, time's yours, Andy. Listen, I cheered for Andy Reid, but after he won, after the 3-0s, I said the Eagles got a lot of work to do. It wasn't this, we won a Super Bowl. No, that was fun for one night. Everybody's over here. Andy won a Super Bowl. I mean, we're good for Andy. Stop trying to hide your real feelings. You're still upset that Carson Wentz got hurt against the Seahawks. You ain't got a ring in 2 years, and you were promised that the new norm was going to be championship football. Don't hide your feelings, people.
And you're just sour because Travis Kelce had a good speech.
He did have a great speech.
This is Hanging with Hendricks and Hennig.
Super Bowl 54 is in the book, which means the NFL season is over, which is sad. But guess what? We still get to talk about it. He's Dashawn Hendricks. I'm Josh Hennig. You know what it is. Hanging with Hennig and Hendricks, the podcast. We're back at you. We got a lot of stuff to get to. We got the opening shots coming up. BS or not. Real talk. And we end as always with the picks.
There you go. The picks. How you doing tonight, Josh?
I'm doing well. You know, we talked about Bad Boys for Life. I finally watched it, by the way.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
That's good.
Hostel and Fuego.
You were texting me that, what was that, last weekend? And I'm like, go to bed, Josh. Like, I think it was a long day.
I was doing way too much Spanglish on your text messaging.
Yeah, I was like, man, it was just too much, man. I was doing a lot. You know, the weekend's a family time. So I'm trying to give everybody some attention. And then you text me. I'm like, hey, what's up with Josh? Everything okay? And then you're texting me gibberish.
Like, I'm texting you Spanglish.
And I was like, you know what, man? Go to sleep, Josh. Because I was telling you that because I was on my way to sleep. I was like, I just can't do it no more.
You had zero energy for a conversation
Zero.
at that
Absolutely
point.
None. I was done.
By the way, how are you doing, by the way? You know, I know
I'm good, man.
You're a busy man, you know.
Yeah, I'm good, man. Living a good life. You know, being blessed. Everything's good. Super Bowl was very exciting.
Yeah.
The halftime show was very amazing.
Yes.
If you know what I mean. It was just great to see the defense of the 49ers came out and they were just on Patrick Mahomes. And this is what makes Super Bowl stories great. What makes Patrick Mahomes being a 24-year-old now MVP and Super Bowl MVP. This is what it's about. You're down in the fourth quarter. Everything's not going your way. I think it was fourth down when he completed that pass to Tyreek Hill. And you have to make a play. And if you do, this is your moment. And if you don't, you're not ready for it. And he made the throw. Tyreek caught the football. And next thing you know, the Chiefs' onslaught was on. And then you look on the other side with a young quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, who I've said it from the jump. This guy, to me, he's not the answer at quarterback. He's a good game manager. He has some arm talent. But people wanted to anoint this guy as he was going to be, you know, the next Tom Brady because he had some success in New England. And I think that the 49ers did a great job of building a foundation. They have a great front seven, good secondary. They have playmakers on offense. They run the football. Their offensive line is legit. They're missing that guy at quarterback. Let me be clear. There's not a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
You know, the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jackson, the Carson Wentz.
The difference makers.
These guys who could change your franchise. I think if I'm the 49ers, I think they still have some good draft capital. I'm getting me a young guy that could be someone who can lead us into the promised land. I'm not sold on Jimmy G. I think that once you stop the 49ers rushing attack, and you put pressure on them to make plays with their quarterback, he was exposed. And he missed that throw to, I think it was Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah.
Deep down the football field.
You overshot him.
And you have a chance to win a Super Bowl. I know people are going to say that I'm nitpicking, that the 49ers should have won that game, whatever the case may be. But if you're being honest with yourself, if you look yourself in the mirror, you know that you're a quarterback away from being a dynasty.
And that's a great point you make because of the fact that there are many times that whoever has the ball in their hand last is going to win those kind of games. Are they not? Like, and Jimmy G had the ball in his hand and he missed his shot. And I think that is a big deal, is that you have every right to question him because in the biggest stage, in the biggest moment,
he came up short.
He was bad in the fourth quarter. He was good for 3 quarters, but then when it mattered most, He didn't deliver.
I just think that he was the guy with the ball in his hands that he shouldn't have the ball in his hands. Like, you just knew it. Like, Lamar Odom has the ball at the end of his hands, at the end of the game, in his hands. You know Kobe's supposed to have the ball.
Right.
But Lamar Odom has it. You have no confidence that the shot's going to go in.
I almost started laughing when you said Lamar Odom had the ball in his hands at the end of a game. It kind of makes
Exactly, but that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo with the ball in his hands at the end of the game in the Super Bowl, like, there's no confidence from 49er faithful that he's going to pull through. There's no confidence that, he's the guy that should have the football in his hands.
Because he hasn't done it before.
Not even that. You just don't think he has the talent to do it. You don't think that he's the guy.
The it factor.
Let me ask you a question. We can go through all 32 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson has the football. You think he's going to do it, right?
Yes.
If Jared Goff has the football, do you think he's going to do it? Carson Wentz has the football. You think he's going to do it?
Yes.
If Tony Romo had the football back in his day, do you think he's going to do it?
Yeah, probably. It's the regular season, not the postseason.
My thing is, my point is that while Jimmy G is definitely a starting quarterback in this league, I'm not going to disrespect him. While he is definitely a quarterback you can win with, that's obvious. He's not a guy that's going to put you over the top when things break down. And that's part of the problem when you kind of look at this team long term, the 49ers. They are built to be a perennial NFC powerhouse the next couple of years.
Yes, you're right.
But the more teams are going to force Jimmy G to beat them, can he do it? And I just don't think he can. He can prove me wrong, obviously. I think that the blueprint is out there. Get a lead on the 49ers. Put pressure on their defense to stop the run and the pass. And on the other end, force them to get out of their comfort zone with running the football and making plays with, the tight end's name is
George Kittle.
George Kittle, yeah. There you go.
My opening shot's about Andy Reid. I think that for everyone who's happy for Andy Reid that won Super Bowl, I don't think we can overlook the fact that Andy Reid would have never won a Super Bowl if he wasn't fired by the Eagles. Here's why. Andy Reid, at the end of his tenure in Philadelphia, for all the success he had, 5 NFC championship games, he took a franchise that was a miserable franchise in the 90s. It had no good reputation and turned him into a perennial contender. But at the end, he lost his grip. He lost his fastball. He lost the ability to know what to do on the draft day, on the coaching at times, hiring the right people. He wasn't surrounding himself with the best players and best coaches. He needed to move on to a new location to hit the reset button.
I don't necessarily agree with all that. I think he just needed a new roster. I think that he had so many ties to the McCoys, to the Jacksons, the Macklins. He drafted Nick Foles. Michael Vick was his, the guy that he bought in from prison, and Vick was getting older and more injury prone. I think he just needed a new roster. Like, okay, I'm going to Kansas City. Alex Smith's there.
He had to go get Alex.
I'm sorry. He had to go get Alex Smith. Let me get him here. He's a guy that, I can kind of have be my bridge until I can get my guy that which he wanted Patrick Mahomes. He identified him.
There were 10 other teams that didn't want Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly. So Andy knew what he was doing. And Andy's always been a guy he can identify quarterback talent.
But here's the thing. I don't know if Andy would have been able to do it if he didn't fail at the end of Philadelphia.
I think that they both needed a change of scenery. Philly kind of got tired of – they need a scapegoat. And it's the problem with the Sixers, what they're going through with Brett Brown. When you aren't having success and there's expectations, now you're in a situation where it's like, okay, we need someone to blame.
Yeah.
And for the Eagles, when things started going wrong, they couldn't blame Vic. They couldn't blame McCoy. They didn't want to blame Jackson. Blame Andy Reid. Because Andy Reid had been there before those guys. Andy Reid didn't win the Super Bowl in 2004. Andy Reid had lost all those NFC Championship games. Donovan was gone. Like, Westbrook was gone. Like, these guys weren't there anymore that you could say, well, they've been there since the beginning. Andy Reid is the guy that went all in on the Dream Team in 2011.
Yes, which was his mistake.
And
he was calling the shots.
In 2012, everything fell apart. So it was time for some fresh blood as far as coaching.
Right, and part of the reason why it fell apart was because of the coaching. The whole Juan Castillo moving in from offensive line, the defensive coordinator, but he's not really calling the plays, and somebody else is calling a defensive line, and Castillo's calling the rest of the defense. That was a failed mistake. The fact that he went out there and paid guys like Nnamdi Asomugha and Jason Babin all that money.
I can't blame him for those moves because Nnamdi Asomugha at the time was the best corner in the league, and Jason Babin was one of the best pass rushers. Like, hindsight's 2020. You could look back and say those moves were bad, but at the time they were made.
But they're still part of his legacy.
Yes.
And part of his legacy is he needed to have that low point in Philadelphia to get to that high point in Kansas City.
Yeah, and part of this is...
Because you got to learn from your mistakes. If you never make mistakes, you never get better.
Yeah, and part of this is that let's not act like Andy Reid didn't get Doug Peterson here.
Oh, of course he did.
Let's act like that. The coaching tree that in Philadelphia still isn't highly influenced by Andy Reid.
Of course it is.
Andy Reid should be looked at as Philadelphia Eagles Hall of Fame allure because his influence on this franchise, not only with his coaching tenure, but with his influence on coaches that are coaching here currently today, are the reason that you look at Philadelphia Eagles football and believe that they are winners.
Right.
Like before Andy Reid, I don't want to hear about the Buddy Ryan era. I don't want to hear about
Buddy never won
that.
anything.
And I got a lot of respect for Buddy Ryan, but I don't want to hear that was the culture of Eagles winning football. No, Andy Reid started the culture.
Andy Reid changed the entire
football.
franchise.
Let's look at this.
Inside the building and the perception from the outside in.
He drafts Donovan McNabb. They make the playoffs. They go to the NFC Championship against the Rams. Have no business being there. Okay, they lost. The next year, you look at them as they're supposed to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, they lost. They are definitely supposed to beat the Carolina Panthers. Donovan gets hurt. They better beat the Atlanta Falcons. They do. They lose in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Then, after the T.O. fiasco,
Injuries.
He rebuilt this franchise to get back to the NFC title game as a wild card team in 2008 to go on the road and be within one stop of beating the Arizona Cardinals. Andy Reid is one of the best coaches of all time. And if you want to dispute that or you have a hidden agenda, I'm sorry. You have a hidden agenda if you don't want to acknowledge Andy Reid, the success he's had all over the league. This was a guy when he first got the Eagles job that people were saying, you hired who? Give Andy Reid the respect he deserves, and he is a champion, and he's earned every minute of it.
And I'll take you a little step further. Let's remember, for all the people who want to criticize Andy Reid's time in Philadelphia, you really need to criticize Jim Johnson. Because Jim Johnson's defense allowed Joe Jaravicius to score that touchdown. It was Jim Johnson's defense that came up short in numerous NFC championship games.
We're not doing that.
It was not Andy Reid's fault that the defense did not come up play at times.
We are not disrespecting or we are not putting any blame on the great Jim Johnson. We are not doing it. I will not allow you to do that with that man. Best defensive coordinator in the history of Philadelphia Eagles football.
Oh, stop it. He's not the best defensive coordinator.
He's not the best defensive coordinator in Philadelphia Eagles football
Buddy
history.
Ryan was the best defensive coordinator in the history of Eagles football.
There's something wrong with you. I can't believe you. Jim Johnson, for years and years, had Lito Shepherd. Is Lito Shepherd a Hall of Famer? Is Sheldon Brown a Hall of Famer?
They had Brian Dawkins.
Is Javon Kearse a Hall of Famer?
Hugh
Douglas a Hall of Famer? Jeremiah Trotter a Hall of Famer? Omar Gaither a Hall of Famer? Like, stop it. Stop it. The Eagles consistently had one of the best defenses of that decade. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and then when the biggest game came around, they couldn't get it done at times.
They had an offense that was good in the regular season, but in the playoffs, especially in the championship games, receivers didn't make plays. Donovan was getting pressure. I mean, don't blame that on the defense.
Those cornerbacks were getting burned in those games.
Stop it. Don't blame it on
the blitz couldn't get there because they were rushing too many guys and Jake Delhomme's dumping off the middle.
They lost that game against the Panthers 14-3. They allowed 14 points. You can't score 17 at home?
Yeah, and one of those scores was they should have never let up.
Pick sixes? Like the defense didn't even allow all 14. Like, are you kidding me? Yeah, against the Falcons, the defense shut down the human weapon in Michael Vick.
That's the game they won. That was because of Dawkins.
I'm not going to sit here and let you disrespect Jim Johnson.
Dawkins had arguably the greatest game of his career in that NFC Championship game against Vick.
You know what? We're going to have to agree to disagree. I'm not going to sit here and allow you to blame Jim Johnson. Eagles legend.
At the end of the day, my whole point was that Andy Reid, I'm happy he won a Super Bowl.
Who would you rather have, Jim Schwartz or Jim Johnson?
Good question.
Good question. Good question. That's something you have to think about.
It is, because what era
Josh,
am I?
you know too much football.
What era of football am I playing?
No. You know too much football. You know too much football.
Well, no, there's a serious reason why I asked that, because I don't know if Jim Johnson's style of defense would be as successful today as it was when he coached. Because in today's world, when you have 3-4 wide receivers, you're spreading out the defense. You can't play as many linebackers. You can't blitz as many guys because guys will just dump it off in the middle of the field. I think Jim Schwartz's defense is much more adept for today's style of offensive play because he's only rushing usually 4 guys.
People are about to run Jim Schwartz out of town. And you said that's a good question. You know what? Please move on. I can't do this with you right now.
You're hanging with Hendricks and Hennig.
All right, it's time for BS or Not here on the podcast. 76ers, you can't not talk about them because they're constantly in the news, whether it's Al Horford saying what he said or Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. But I want to start with Joel Embiid. Dashawn, I need to know, is this BS or not? Joel Embiid talking about the Sixers and Brett Brown.
I stand by what I said. If we want to get someone the ball, we can find a way. So, but then again, coaches only can have so much control. They're not on the court shooting the ball or, passing it, making plays. All they can do is call plays, and we just got to execute.
That's not BS. I'm not going to, really rag on Brett Brown. That's not BS. Joel Embiid is keeping it real. The team's personnel just doesn't fit. I mean, in the NBA, coaching is the most overrated thing, in my opinion. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons don't fit together. Mm-hmm. Tobias Harris doesn't fit on this team. Al Horford doesn't fit on this team. Josh Richardson doesn't fit on this team, in my opinion. That's just what it is. They've played, 19 games, 20 games together or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
They're like 11-8.
Yeah, it's 11-8.
It's not a very good team put together. That's more on GM and ownership than it is coaching. Brett Brown has some blame, and I still believe that they need a change at the head coach position, more so because they just need a different direction. But right there, Joel Embiid is keeping it 100. They're just not built from a personnel standpoint to be successful.
But even if they have a new head coach, is that guy going to be able to get this roster where it needs to be?
No, not this current roster, but if he has a vision in the new roster, then you judge him off of the guys he gets in there. It's kind of like the NFL adage where you hire a new head coach and he wants his own quarterback and he wants his own system. Then you judge him off of that. When Cliff Kingsbury came in this year to the Arizona Cardinals, are you judging him off of last year? No, he had nothing to do with last year.
Right.
You're judging him off of what he did when he got his guys. So, you can't fire Brett Brown in season. I think that's something that has to wait till after the season.
People are talking about it, though.
I mean, I could understand if they did it. I could see maybe it could spark something or whatever. But you're asking a guy to come in and basically say, "Okay, I'm just the guy with the voice," because he's not going to be able to put in anything midseason.
No, you can't. Here's my thing, and I think that you and I sat down and watched that detail, Kobe Bryant's final detail before he passed away on ESPN Plus. What did Kobe talk about in that thing?
Spacing.
That's the player's fault. That's not the coach's fault. And I think at some point...
But that's also a personnel fault, though. You got guys on the floor that they don't do what you need them to do. Like Ben Simmons, I think we can both acknowledge that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid do not fit together.
No, they don't. But at some point, Ben Simmons is supposed to have a high basketball IQ, right? Al Horford, high basketball. We always get told this stuff. Well, why on earth is Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris right next to each other?
Yeah.
Why is Al Horford and Joel Embiid right near each other? Why can't a guy look over his shoulder? I mean, listen, I'm no NBA player over here, okay? But I play enough pickup basketball to know that if I'm close to somebody, space it out. Go to the corner. Set a pick. Go make a screen. Cut to the basket. Run the baseline. It's like these guys run to a spot and just stand there at times. And I can't blame Brett Brown for that. I have to agree with Joel Embiid. That's the player's fault, D.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it from a deeper point, Joel Embiid is keeping it 100.
Al Horford spoke to the media after practice, and he was asked about basically guys in the locker room. Here's the question, and here's Al Horford's answer.
Does anybody need to stand up and call somebody out?
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff going on in the locker room, and we'll keep that internal. But we all know we need to do better. We need to step it up, and it's a great opportunity to do it.
BS or not, D?
He's keeping it 100. I think that they're all calling each other out. I think Joel is kind of frustrated with Ben. I think Ben is kind of looking at it, well, we were having a lot of success before Joel came back. These aren't sources, I'm just assuming. I think that there is some dissension because when you're not playing well, you start to point fingers and guys aren't playing well, guys aren't shooting the ball well, and there's a lack of effort. And those things, tend to losing causes a lot of this rift. And which is why if you're the Sixers, you need to make some type of statement to say, okay, because this is a team with expectations of winning a title. And right now, they look like a first-round exit, in my opinion. And I don't think, I've said it before, Al Horford's not a fit to me. Joel Embiid, it's going to be him or Ben Simmons. I have been on the boat if they could play together for years. It's gotten to the point where watching them is painful. The spacing is terrible. Obviously, one's not aggressive when the other's on the floor. People want to compare it to Kobe and Shaq. Well, Kobe and Shaq won titles. They were successful. They could have probably made it work longer if one didn't want to be this and the other one to be that. These guys can't coexist on the floor together, and that's a problem.
And that's why I think I am thoroughly convinced that you will never win a championship if these two are on the same court together, on the same team. It's just never going to happen. And I'm conflicted of who they should trade. I keep going back and forth in my mind. These last few weeks, I'm conflicted because I think that you could win a championship building around either one of these players. 100%. Like if you traded Embiid, you could run a system like a combination of Lakers Showtime and Steve Nash with the Suns with Ben Simmons. Downhill, shooters, guys cutting to the basket, athletes playing great defense. You could do that, Ben Simmons.
But what's this? Here's the problem. What's your ceiling with Ben Simmons as your best player? Even surrounded by shooters and a dunker and a dunk spot, I don't know if your ceiling is championship team.
I think it kind of depends on who the second player is.
Exactly.
And I think
if you say it's a guard or a scoring wing, then I believe that your ceiling could have a chance of being that.
Right.
Now, what's your ceiling with Joel Embiid as your best player?
Well, the problem with Embiid is your style is probably going to look, and I'm not saying literally is this, a little like Dwight Howard with the Magic when they went to the NBA Finals.
I don't believe that, though, because just like it matters what your second guy is with Ben Simmons, if you traded Ben Simmons for Damian Lillard,
right,
he's your best player. No disrespect to Joel Embiid, but Damian Lillard's your best player. Now Joel Embiid doesn't have the pressure of being the face of the franchise. And
is that the bigger solution, though? Is the bigger solution that neither one of these guys can be the best player?
Well, let me ask you a question. Would you rather have Ben Simmons and let's say Jason Tatum?
I was going to go Bradley Beal, but sure.
Well, no, that's the guard. No, we're going with the wing.
Okay.
Or would you rather have Damian Lillard and Joel Embiid?
I would personally, I would go Lillard and Embiid.
Because your ceiling is higher.
But I'm not 100% sure what the rest of that team would look like.
But I feel like that even with the team full of average guys, those two guys instantly makes you the best team in the East.
Like there was one rumor put out there, and I don't remember who put it out there, but one person said, what if the Sixers and Clippers both have poor postseasons? What if you trade Embiid for Paul George?
No. I wouldn't do that. I don't think that's a team that... Problem with trading Embiid is his injury history scares a lot of teams. I think you would get more back value-wise for Simmons.
See, I'm not sure because I think that people still look at Simmons and have a lot of questions about him too, with him not shooting, the fact that...
Yeah, but everybody feels like that they could do a better job than you are. I mean, look at Markelle Fultz.
Well, you say the same with Embiid and the injuries. Some people may say that my training staff is better than yours. Like, remember with the Phoenix Suns, they took on everybody's injuries because their theory was, we can rehab anyway. And they did. They rehabbed Shaq. They rehabbed Grant Hill back to health. They made everybody healthier than they were before. So maybe another team's training staff says, I can do better with that guy.
I see that, but when Joel Embiid, people are so scared of him breaking down, of him only having maybe 2-3 more years of dominant basketball before he becomes Greg Oden because of the injury history, that trading Simmons would bring you a massive haul, and keeping Embiid outweighs trading him for a minimum haul because the team is worried about his injury history.
You're hanging with Hendricks and Hennig.
All right, it's time for some real talk here on the Hanging with Hennig and Hendricks podcast. First of all, we got to start with college basketball because I'm watching college basketball lately, and I just feel like the product's mediocre. It just feels like there's no dominant team. There's no real superstar player out there. You know, everybody who's going to be high in the draft this year, they either didn't play college basketball this year or they're in some other country. It's just, it just feels hollow with college basketball this year. I mean, your Final Four this year could be West Virginia, Gonzaga, Illinois, and Oregon, for goodness sake. Like, it's not even going to be like it's not going to be the normal superpower teams. It's going to be a bunch of random teams that happen to survive the upsets.
Well, here's the thing. First of all, college basketball will always have some level of popularity because the March Madness tournament. People are going to gamble. It's a time to watch all these games on a Thursday and a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday, especially the first weekend. It's always going to have that allure of the bracket buster. So college basketball will survive that as far as that aspect. But the problem is the one and done rule is about to go, get up out of here. I think college basketball did the wrong thing with those guys. You had every single year being must-watch TV because you had these prospects that everybody wanted to see, that is going to be the next this, next that, and go into the NBA draft. How much more exciting would college basketball be this year if you had James Wiseman without the Memphis garbage? If you had R.J. Hampton going to Kansas? If you had LaMelo Ball playing for a Kentucky or something like that? That's where I think college basketball really dropped the ball. They didn't say, we need these guys. They said our brand was bigger than these guys.
Their ego.
So now you have these guys going to play for the Guangdong Ducks or the New Zealand Breakers and these teams you never heard of.
Right.
And you're losing out on the
case,
product.
He's not even playing at all. It's
exactly, because of some dumb rule with the NCAA. I haven't watched a single college basketball game this year. For the first time in my lifetime, I haven't, and I'm a Villanova fan, diehard Villanova fan. I haven't watched the product because the excitement level is just not there for me to say, I got 5 things to do on a Wednesday night. Let me make room for that 6th thing, which be watch a college basketball game. Like, I'm not even excited for North Carolina Duke. That's a game every year I'm excited for. I'm a fan of Cole Anthony. I like him as a prospect. But I have all expectation that Duke's going to beat them by 30 and Anthony might score 25
because
points.
The team isn't good.
Exactly. But there's no star power in college basketball. And in basketball especially. In the NFL, you're going to watch because it's football. So if Patrick Mahomes is hurt and Carson Wentz is hurt, you're going to watch because it's football. It may not be the same, razzle dazzle as it would be if those guys were playing.
Football.
But it's still football, and there's a chance for a new star to be made.
But the other thing is that I'm glad you brought up football. Football's a team sport. Football, everyone has to do their job for you to win. The offensive line has to block, the defense has to tackle, the quarterback has to throw to the right receiver who's open. In basketball, one dude can change everything. And in college basketball, it's even more important. Look at what Trae Young did at Oklahoma. That team was a bunch of nobodies. But Trae Young was so talented, he made them a contender. So for me in college basketball, I'm watching these games and I'm like, who the heck is going to win out here? Who's going to win a championship? And, there's no Zion this year. There's no Ja Morant. There's no superstar, like you said, in college basketball. And it's just a mediocre product. Look, we're all going to watch tournaments, like you said. The conference tournaments, the NCAA tournament, but there's no favorite. Don't tell me Baylor is the favorite. That's the biggest load of garbage in the world. They may be number 1 right now, but I guarantee you they're losing the second round.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that a lot of people are going to start tuning out of college basketball because you're going to have the best players being in college basketball who have really no chance of being anything in the NBA.
Yep.
maybe you'll have the Trae Young story once in a while where a guy who wasn't highly recruited comes out, has a monster year, and gets himself drafted.
Sure.
Or the Buddy Hield story. But that doesn't happen that often. And it's
really
sad.
quick, notice what school that was.
Oklahoma.
Both those guys went to Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
That's not Kentucky. That's not Duke. That's not North Carolina.
It's not a blue blood.
It's not a blue blood. And people, no matter how much they hate on Duke and all those schools, they want to see them in the tournament because when they're filling out their bracket, they want to go out there and say, I picked so-and-so to win the championship. And this year, you can't do that.
Still picking Villanova.
Speaking of Zion, did you see my tweet earlier today?
Don't remind me.
So, and I'm asking this again. I asked NBA Twitter and everybody ghosted me because you're all scared to confront me. But let's have some real talk right now here on the Hanging with Hennig and Hendricks podcast. The real talk is I'm concerned about Zion because if his name wasn't Zion Williamson and he was anybody else with that frame at 285 pounds, looking like he does, run up and down the court, every medical and health expert would say, I don't think his body's going to hold up under that wear and tear. But because his name is Zion Williamson and the hype that came with him being the number 1 overall pick and the great smile and the box office attraction, people don't want to talk about the fact that this guy just went up against the Bucks and got shut down because he's a small in height. He may be big and strong, but he's not going to be able to compete long term weighing as much as he does. And I don't know why nobody wants to talk about that.
I think that it's too early to judge him. I think he's got some time to lose the weight. He has been special this year as far as his play, even after the injury. He's young, man. You got to give this kid a chance to kind of fill out his body.
And he's filled out all right.
And I meant that in the sense of become what people think he can be.
Most dudes need to fill out when they come to the NBA. Zion needs to lean out now in the NBA.
Are you going to let me finish? Zion, to me, his ceiling isn't best player in the league. I don't think that's a ceiling. I think he could be special. I think he could be one of the top 10 players in the league. I just feel like that there has to be some major body changes for him to have a chance to be a LeBron type player. I don't know if a player that heavy can be that type of guy.
Listen, you brought it up when we talked about this in the past. You compared him to Blake Griffin. I compared him to Shawn Kemp. He's a freak athlete, but he's not. He doesn't have that it factor like Ja Morant does to be the best player. We talked about the Sixers and win a championship. Ja Morant, I love his game. I love his attitude. That Memphis team is probably going to the postseason, and nobody picked them to go there. And it's because of Ja Morant. It's not because of Dylan Brooks. It's not because of Jaren Jackson. It's not because of the coach. It's because of Ja Morant. When I look at Zion, he's putting up cool stats. He got the big smile, lots of highlights, but his team isn't winning. And I think that's going to be a frustrating issue down there in New Orleans if he gets injured again, which I hate to say this, but once you hurt your knee a couple times, it's going to be prone to be injured again. And especially if you're 285 pounds and 6'6". I'm just worried about his health long term, man. It's not that I hate on Zion, but I look at him right up and down the court. I look at him struggle against Giannis and the Lopez brothers, and I sit there and say, this is what I expected. I expected a guy to put up some flashy moments and have some great times, but he's not going to win you a championship as the best player.
He's a rookie, man. You got to give him some time, man. He's a rookie. I think he'll be special.
Watch Ja Morant make the playoffs and just go get a triple-double in a game.
I like Ja, but the same way we're going to anoint Ja to be something special because he's playing well, we can't sit here and dismiss Zion because he's not having that type of a rookie year.
Ja Morant is going to have a better career than Zion Williamson.
I mean, I agree with that.
You're hanging with Hendricks and Hennig.
All right, so in our pick segment here on the podcast, Dashawn Hendricks, what's your Twitter handle again?
At Dashawn Hendrick. That's at Dashawn Hendrick.
I'm at Josh Hennig on Twitter. Of course, you can follow us there. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever podcast platform you use, you can catch us on there. Subscribe, leave a rating. We appreciate your support here on the podcast. Before we get out of here, we do our picks. We do a little bit different this time. Usually during football season, we'll give you football picks During basketball playoffs, we'll give you basketball picks. But for right now, we are going to talk about who would you rather start your NBA franchise with. You got to pick one. You can't have them all. Are you starting your NBA franchise with Giannis, Harden, Trae Young, Ja Morant, or Luka Doncic?
Give me the rundown one more time, man. I got
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
James Harden.
Oh, no.
Trae Young. Ja Morant. Luka Doncic.
Woo! That's a tough one, man. I'm going to have to go with Ja. And it's a close between Ja and Trae. Luka's not far behind both of them. I think Luka's special. But Ja is the pick for me. If those guys were all in a draft, I'm taking Ja number one. And that's not to say that he's better than Giannis or no. I just think that Ja has he's going to change that franchise. I think he's going to win championships. He's going to win a league MVP. I think he's that special of a talent. And the small school, the chip on his shoulder, the non-fearless, a lot of AI in Ja. I'm high on him, man. I'm taking Ja.
I'm going Giannis, and here's why. The one thing about the other guys on that list, they all have skill sets that have a point that they can't get higher. I don't think Giannis is anywhere near what he's going to be potentially. I don't know if he has a ceiling. Like Luka, we know what Luka is. He's a great shooter, great passer. He's a triple-double threat. He's a smooth operator. Trae Young, he's a dynamo. He's electric. He's incredible to watch. Same thing with Ja Morant. You know, Ja Morant's probably more of a triple-double threat than Trae Young at this point in his career. Both them super talented. James Harden, he's a scoring machine. But Giannis, he's just now becoming a better shooter. He's a freak on the offensive and defensive end. You can pair him up next to anybody. Remember, we talked about with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. They might not be able to play together to win a championship. Giannis can play with anybody and win a championship. And that's who I want to start my franchise with. Give me the guy.
Giannis is a killer, man. I can't argue.
Give me that guy.
I can't argue Giannis. I'm a point guard guy, man. I get my point guard with that type of talent, that type of, he can sell tickets. He's marketable. It's just, that's who I'm starting my franchise with, man. I love Giannis, though.
Now, really quick, if I couldn't have Giannis and you couldn't have, you said Ja, right?
Yeah.
If you couldn't have Ja, who would be your second pick, though? Like let's say you and I
have a draft.
Yeah. Let's say you were starting with a third and fourth pick, so the 1 and 2 picks, and Giannis and Ja got taken off the board.
Oh, I'm taking Luka. Luka's a great shooter. He can rebound, pass. I got two guys in the backcourt that playmaking and scoring is not going to be a problem. But the guys you gave me on the list, it makes no sense for me to draft Trae Young, too. Him and Ja, they play the same position. I think Luka could play off the ball and still strive.
See, I would go Luka as well because I think what Luka does is he doesn't have a position. And I think the way the league is going is positionless basketball. And I think that he's a perfect positionless guy. Him, Giannis, these guys who can do multiple things, they're freaks and they're fun to watch. And I think that there's something to be said for if you're starting a franchise, you need a box office attraction. And one of the problems I have with James Harden is that I think that his attraction is wearing off. Whereas I think guys like Morant and Luka and Giannis, they have the box office it factor too. They have the it factor on the court and the box office off the court. All right, one more pick before we get out of here. We're before the NBA All-Star break. So we don't know what the rest of the season is going to look like yet. Who is going to win the NBA title?
Man. Right now, I got to say the Los Angeles Clippers.
Damn, you took my pick.
Well.
What's your reason?
Kawhi Leonard, to me, still the best player in the NBA when healthy. I love Giannis, 1A, 1B. But I think that Kawhi right now, they're 16-4 when him and Paul George play together. They haven't really played together. I think they're waiting for the playoffs to kind of all get healthy. I love the way the team is built around them. with Lou Williams and, those guys coming off the bench. I just feel like that, we seen it last year with Kawhi. When it's time to start winning series, I think Paul George and Kawhi will step up to the plate. And I think their only real challenge in the West, to me, is the Lakers because of the greatness of LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But we've already seen when those teams go head-to-head who's the better team. So
I think the Clippers have the best supporting cast of any top team in the NBA. I think that, look, a lot of teams have superstars. The Bucks have Giannis. The Lakers have AD and LeBron. But Kawhi and Paul George, the drop-off from their two best players to 3, 4, 5 is not as steep as the other teams. And to me, that's a big, big deal. Because how many times we've seen a playoff series, it's a third or fourth guy has to be stepping up, right? I mean, Andre Iguodala for the Warriors years ago, or whether it's Derek Fisher back in the day for the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq, you always need that third and fourth guy to step up.
A lot could change at the trade deadline, though. A lot could change. I will say this. The Lakers have not fared well against top competition. I think they're 5-6 against the top teams in the NBA. They beat up on a lot of the weaker teams, which is why their record is so bloated. The Clippers are only 3 games back. I just don't see the Lakers in April and May beating a team that deep like the Clippers in a 7-game series. LeBron and AD are tremendous. They're great, but I don't think they're great enough to overcome the depth of the Los Angeles Clippers.
I agree. All right, this has been the Hanging with Hennig and Hendricks podcast. Subscribe, Spotify, Apple
Hit that
Podcasts.
Sub button. Hit that sub button.
Wherever you are catching us, hit that sub button, and we'll be back with you next week. He's the one and only, Dashawn Hendricks.
Jello legs. Jello legs.
I thought it was Slinky Neck.
Slinky neck and Jello legs.
I'm Josh Hennig. Thanks for catching us. We'll hang out with you each and every week right here.
This is Hanging with Hendricks and Hennig,